Would this be a hyperlink?
You know, you have to go on your phone and
Hi, Dave.
we're not even doing this. Shave my mouth on Saturday.
I don't think I'm going to. Did you ask her usually those events on the voice so I had that kind of stick around that area. Don't run away with it.
Years ago I went there and I could tell. And
Next time we hold it.
They're not saying no.
Yeah. Either way, yeah, that's perfect. That's a great photo right there. You guys, this is a great way to start this one. Okay. All right, good afternoon. 5 months ago, I stood at this podium and announced that I would lead an effort to legalize sports betting during the 2022 legislative session. During the weeks between then and now, I've traveled all over the state, from the Red Lake Nation in northwestern Minnesota to sports betting data companies located in downtown Minneapolis, listening to stakeholders and trying to develop a Minnesota-specific model to legalize sports betting. During that process, I consulted with all 11 of Minnesota's tribal nations, our professional sports teams, our universities, and experts on problem gaming. I also examined the law in 32 states that have legalized sports betting and even took a field trip to Iowa. The product of all of this is a bill that we are unveiling today and that will be heard in the House Commerce Committee tomorrow. This will be the first time a legislative committee in Minnesota has considered sports betting bill, and I anticipate it will be the first time that a committee approves a sports betting bill in Minnesota. Our bill includes both brick and mortar sports betting at tribal casinos, as well as statewide mobile sports betting operated by the tribes in partnership with commercial operators. To put that in plain terms, if this bill passes, Minnesotans will be able to visit sports betting lounges and casinos all across Minnesota, and they'll also be able to wager on sports from their own mobile phones, anywhere in the state. We would tax mobile sports betting at a level consistent or below what other states have done across the country. The money generated from this tax would be dedicated to three causes. First, the regulations and consumer protections necessary to make sure that sports betting is fair and doesn't influence what's happening on the field, particularly at the amateur level. Second, we devote 40% of the tax revenue generated to addressing and treating problem gaming. We need to be honest. Most people can gamble without issue, but for a small subset, it's a real problem. We would devote more resources than ever before to confronting this problem. Finally, 40% of the tax revenue raised would go to funding youth sports and other youth programming across the state, but with particular emphasis on communities experiencing high levels of juvenile crime. Juvenile crime is at unacceptable levels all across Minnesota, and while there's no single cause or one single solution, we know that when kids are busy playing sports, they're not getting into trouble doing something else. It's been a long road to get to this point, and there's a long road in front of us. The bill is going to have to travel through at least 6 committees in the coming weeks, not to mention floor votes in both chambers. But we've got a lot of momentum. We've got a lot of support across the state. I can comfortably say that the stakeholders that I've talked to are interested in seeing this happen and happen this year. And we've also got bipartisan support. And I want to thank Representative Garofalo in particular for his partnership and leadership on the bill. Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Chairman Stephenson. It's a good day in Minnesota to show some progress on transitioning Minnesota from the black market of unregulated activity to a regulated market with consumer transparency, consumer protections, as well as defunding organized crime and money laundering. This is a very positive first step. No one should have any qualms about this. This is going to be it's going to be a challenging road, but I want to thank Chairman Stephenson for his work. As he mentioned before, he's traveled across the state in his Ferrari Testarossa, making sure, that's what you drive, right? Is that, no? Something like that, yeah. No, he's put a lot of time, a lot of energy into this. He's done the homework to understand and learn from other states. One of the benefits of actually, I think a lot of us would have liked to have seen this happen sooner rather than later, but one of the benefits of going later is it gives us the opportunity to learn from the mistakes of other states. And this gives us an opportunity to avoid that. So I'm honored to stand here today and support this bill. Certainly, we are transitioning a black market to a regulated market. No one should make any, should have no misunderstanding about it. There is a very robust black market in Minnesota right now. They have excellent customer service. They will extend you credit. They will come and get the cash from you. This is what's happening in Minnesota. And as we transition to a regulated market, there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some conflict. That's part of the that's part of the legislative process. But I'm here today to represent myself, as well as many members of both the Republican and Democratic parties who are here today to say, we want to support regulated, safe sports gambling in Minnesota, and let's move Minnesota forward. Thank you.
Happy to take questions.
Can you describe the interplay between state, non-tribal entities and tribal entities as to who gets what, how they play together?
So the tribal nations of Minnesota are the subject matter experts when it comes to gaming in Minnesota. They have been doing it longer and more successfully. Tribal gaming is the most regulated gaming in the world. You can have confidence that when you go into a tribal casino and you hit on a hand of blackjack, that you're going to get your money's worth, right? So it makes sense when we make this major change in Minnesota law, the biggest change in gambling law in 40 years, that we would turn to the most trusted and most experienced operators of gambling in Minnesota, which is the tribes. So the bill contemplates that there would be both brick and mortar gaming at tribal casinos across the state, and also mobile sports betting that would be operated by the tribes. The tribes would have the ability to partner with commercial operators, such as FanDuel, DraftKings, MGM.
So it sounds like they get everything they need. Why aren't they standing up there with you?
Well, I think they have a statement that they're putting out. We've been having good, really positive conversations with the tribes that are ongoing. We're having good, positive conversations with the professional teams. I think, I don't know if there was, I heard there was a statement coming out in the room. I don't know if you had it yet.
Yeah, we have.
There you go.
I would call it an evolving position, but certainly not an all-out endorsement.
I would say that the bill has to go through 6 committees, and we have a lot of work to do to get the language fine-tuned, but we are absolutely on the right path.
Did you cut out the racetracks? Would it be just tribes?
It would be just the tribes.
Oh, at casinos and then on apps, and not at racetracks?
Correct.
Okay, and the sports teams, you mentioned them. What did your conversations been with them? They could not have a sports book in Target Center, I assume. So what conversations?
We've been having a lot of conversations with the teams. They, of course, are the ones creating the product that people are wagering on. Without them, there'd be nothing to bet on. So there's a lot of important conversations to have there. And the chief concerns that the teams have, it's also a big concern that I and Representative Garofalo and everyone has, which is we want to make sure that what's happening in the betting doesn't impact what happens on the field, that we're ensuring the integrity of the game. That's very important to the professional teams. It's very important to me. And so we've been having a lot of conversations about how to make sure that happens. One of the things that I mentioned in my remarks is we're going to devote some of the tax revenue generated from this to ensuring that the betting operations don't impact what happens on the field.
Representative, why take the tracks out of this? Just curious why they're not involved now.
As I mentioned, this is the biggest change in gaming law in 40 years in Minnesota, and the tribes are really the subject matter experts when it comes to gaming. They have the most experience and have done it at the highest levels. They're the most regulated gaming in the world. It makes sense to start there as we're building out the massive change to sports gaming and to trust those partners who have done it the best and the longest.
Could the tracks be added at a later date if it's
It's not contemplated in this bill.
I thought the teams wanted a cut.
I
Giving them a cut?
would not ever presume to speak for the teams. That has not been a topic of conversation.
They don't want an integrity fee or anything like that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but that has not been a topic of conversation.
You spoke to them saying what they really wanted was integrity on the field, so they
Right.
never mentioned that to you. They never mentioned that they would like to make some money off this.
It has not been a topic of our conversations.
To clarify, you said 40% to problem gambling, 40% to youth sports, and is the other 20% toward ensuring the integrity?
And regulating, consumer protections, licensing regulation, and ensuring the integrity on the field. That's right.
How does one ensure integrity on the field? I mean, you have a credit check on every player and involved? I mean, seriously.
No, I mean, it's a great question, and there's a few different angles to it. One is, there are companies that specialize in trying to find problematic betting behavior, so they can look at lines from all across the world, and they can see when something isn't adding up, and that's a good flag that there needs to be further investigation. And then you have compliance officials at the university or at the pro teams that can follow up on the information and try and dig in to what's happening. I don't know, Pat, do you have anything more that you would add on that subject about how to do it?
I would just say there's a local resource.
microphone?
Sorry. What I would say, there's a local Minnesota company called Sport Radar, and one of the things they specialize in is that betting analytics that Chairman Stephenson mentioned, where they can go in, they can have expected modeling of what behaviors they're going to be seeing for betting. They can detect unusual behavior. I believe they had a recent, I think this is public, they released data on worldwide gaming. And last year, they recognized 930 separate events that actually raised a flag in their system. Now, I shouldn't, if you go out and go, this information is publicly available, but Sport Radar is a Minnesota company, really good resource in what they can bring in terms of data analytics to finding those sort of irregular betting patterns.
You guys got an estimate on how much you're gonna bring in?
We haven't got a formal revenue estimate yet. The thing that I always say about that is that sports betting is a high volume, low margin business. So this is not going to be a massive amount of money. I mean, it will be significant, but not, a budget forecast changing event. And of course, as I mentioned, we're keeping the taxes as low as we can while still accomplishing the goals that we have in the legislation. And that goes to the point that Representative Garofalo made about wanting to transition from a black market economy to a legitimate economy. If we drive up the cost too high, it will impede that progress, which is really important. Because if you have someone who's engaging in the black market, they may have great customer service, but they have no problem gaming service in the black market. They have no consumer protections. If you get cheated, you can't go to a regulator, right? So we want people in that legitimate market so we can address everything that comes with this activity. But to accomplish that, we need to keep the taxes relatively low.
And what is the rate?
10% on profit, on net profit. Is that the way we should say it? Yeah.
The way this is structured, would it require a change in the compact?
The bill says that the existing compacts won't be touched. That's important. It would be new compacts that would be separate and aside from the existing compacts that would relate only to the brick and mortar operations. You don't need compacting for the mobile.
So it's your understanding that the tribes are on board?
It's my understanding that, consistent with the statement that they gave you, that they want to see a bill advance this year. We're working very closely together and having ongoing conversations. I would not be bringing a bill forward today if I didn't think that we could earn tribal support.
But that's not quite saying, yeah, they're on board with this bill. In other words, are there still some things that you think need to be worked out with the tribes, or do you feel like we're good?
What I would say is that this is a 25, 26-page document that has, a lot of text in it, and has to go through 6 committees, and there's a lot of moving pieces. So I think that the statement that they're giving you, I don't want to speak for the tribes. They're sovereign entities that certainly can speak for themselves, but I feel very comfortable as someone who would not be bringing a bill forward if we didn't think we had a path to tribal support. I feel very comfortable standing before you today with a bill.
Mr. Chair, the money involved is probably closer to 20 million than, say, 200 million.
In terms of the tax revenue? Yeah.
Would it not be the first time in Minnesota that tribal gambling is sharing profits with the state in one form or another? I mean, I don't know if the money comes to the state from DraftKings or, but is that not a first for Minnesota?
So under the existing structure, the tribes pay a compacting fee, I believe annually, though I would have to check. But other than that, certainly gaming on reservation lands is not subject to state taxes.
And would the brick and mortar be, would you be collecting on the brick and mortar?
No.
As a state, so that state within, so your reasoning is that once it's sort of in the ether off reservation, that the state would get.
Yeah, actually, there is a litigation coming out of Florida exactly to what the point you're talking about, which is that federal courts have held that if you're doing mobile betting on a statewide basis, it can't be considered as happening on only on the reservation land, and thus it's subject to state regulation and state taxation.
So the tribes do not pay the 10% tax on net profits from bets placed at the brick and mortar, but do pay 10% on bets placed through a mobile app.
Correct.
Okay.
Step back just a sec. So, gambling is still not universally accepted in society, across society. Can you speak to parents who are happy to see more money go to youth sports, but don't like the idea that it is money gotten from, gambling, which some people don't support, on the very sports that they're playing?
Well, I think this really goes to the question of expanding gambling, and I really kind of reject the premise that we're expanding gambling with this bill, because as Representative Garofalo said, it's already happening here, and that's only going to increase. I look at both the explicit and implicit advertising that's occurring around sports betting right now as being just incredible. By explicit, I mean you watch the Super Bowl and every other ad was for sports betting. And when you tune in to any kind of sports coverage these days, or even watch a game, increasingly you're seeing more and more conversation about the gambling aspects of it, talking about sports events in gambling terms. Right now, where we don't have a legal market in Minnesota, if you are watching that and just getting more and more interested, your only outlet is either drive to Iowa with Pat Garofalo or go online to Bovada, right?
That's fair, but there is a difference between companies advertising, and you can tell your kids that's actually not legal, and the state blessing it and saying, this is something we support. This is how we're going to fund you, part of you.
I think it's better to have a legal and safe marketplace that people can participate in than to shove people into underground and unsafe options.
But just to be clear, the sports bar that you might go to in Iowa would not be allowed to sponsor this in Minnesota.
That's right.
Meaning the privately owned Joe's Sports Bar would not be able to do, other than you could sit in there with your phone.
You wouldn't be able to because you'd be in Iowa. You'd have to be in Minnesota to do this.
Right.
In Iowa, you would go to this, you go to Iowa, you participate using DraftKings or FanDuel or any number of different operators who could partner with a tribe to participate in the Minnesota market. So the entities that are running the gambling operations in Iowa would be able to participate in the Minnesota market.
I just mean Joe's Sports Bar in Farmington would not benefit from this bill.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Privately owned.
Well, I think that that the way that if you are a sports-related enterprise in Minnesota, that you benefit from this is by having more butts in the seats and people who are interested in sports and want to sit in the Buffalo Wild Wings where you got 12 TVs so you can monitor every NFL game. I mean, I don't know that it isn't a positive for them as well.
Would a mobile app have a geo-fencing like Iowa's app?
Yes, it would have to be fenced to Minnesota.
Is this going to hurt pull tab operations that already support youth sports?
I don't think it will hurt them at all. I think that these are two very different types of entertainment. And I think that the people who enjoy going out and playing pull tabs will still be able to do that and still want to do that. This is just another element.
So in the states that have the mobile betting right now, how does the state learn how much is being bet, how much is being awarded, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, well, you know, when you're doing the mobile, there's a lot of data that's collected, and we're going to have a very rigorous licensing and regulation regime with a lot of reporting requirements on the front end and on the back end. So it will be a more transparent process, and when we talk about problem gaming and we talk about a lot of the other illicit effects, that's one of major advantage.
Do you see, what is the biggest issue you see right now between your bill and the Senate's bill, given that they were developed separately?
Well, I think that the Senate, I haven't had a chance to review their bill very carefully yet, so that's kind of why I'm pausing and thinking about it. I mean, obviously, we took different approaches to how we structure the market, but beyond that, I'd have to really dig into the bill, which I just haven't had a chance to do yet.
Have you talked to Governor Walz about this and where you would stand on this language that you have out now?
I haven't talked to him specifically about this language. I've had communications with the administration in the past about the topic of sports betting and about the conversations that we're having with the tribes, and I think that they think that those conversations are very important as well, but otherwise I wouldn't speak for Governor Walz today.
But he's been saying, make sure the tribes are okay.
I think, yeah, that's a view that I share, right, is that you have to have support and buy-in from the tribal governments for this to work.
Last question.
From the 32 states that you reviewed, which is your bill most similar to?
Oh, man. We borrowed from a lot of different places in a lot of different respects. Now, a lot of states only have brick and mortar operations, and we clearly are not going in that direction. So, you know, when you look at a neighboring state like Iowa, there are some similarities there. But of course, we're going with the trusted partnerships that we have with the tribes to operate that. That's obviously not the route they took in Iowa. So I don't know that there's a great specific answer to that this is the state. What we have done is develop a model that is specific to Minnesota, that works with the dynamic that we have here in Minnesota, that's designed for Minnesotans.
Can I do, yeah, unlike the lottery, this is not a sucker bet, meaning most of what is bet goes back to players. How much does the sponsor make? I mean, if it's $1 billion.
I'm going to let Pat answer that one.
Thanks. And the state tax raises $20 million, and 90-some% is paid back to players. What is in this for the tribe?
Okay, so first of all, let's have a little sports gambling 101 for terms. The first term is handle. Okay, handle is the amount of money that is actually wagered on sports. This is generally what you'll see as the size of the sports gambling market. The hold is what the gambling operator makes. So on the actual wagers themselves, they take in, let's say, $100. How much do they actually take in in terms of gambling winnings from the house's perspective? That hold is generally recognized at about 5 or perhaps 6%. Now, that is an aggregate number. It can flow over time. So for example, the last Super Bowl, the sports books did really, really good. They had a hold well in excess of 6%. When the Super Bowl was in Minnesota and Philadelphia and New England played, the hold was 2%. So it was a really good one for the players. So when we're talking about what that is, that's sort of the basis point for what the potential for profit is. Now, from that hold, you have expenses, promotions, other items. But you're talking about right now, and this can't be understated, as Chairman Stephenson said, this is a multi-billion-dollar black market that we're transitioning to a regulated environment. So it is natural that there's going to be conflict about who makes money from this. That's part of this legislative process. But I'm confident that working together, we can make those decisions, and it's a good thing. But generally speaking, you take the size of the market, however much is being wagered, a good round estimate is about 5%.
Your tax is on hold minus expenses or just hold?
It's on net profit.
So hold minus expenses.
And you said this wouldn't be revenue forecast changing, but you must have a projection of some kind, what this.
I think that what Peter was saying is, in terms of the amount is probably more accurate. Like I said, I would probably wait to put a number. He said in the, 20 million, but I think even that's probably on the high end.
I'll take the over.
You'll take the over? Okay. We'll see when we get the revenue estimate back from the department.
All right, thanks, folks.
Thank you.
We've got multiple hearings on this, you can learn all about it.
Thanks, everyone.
That's more over.
And
Yes.
Farmington, that cross.